hello again. Shout out to my facilities professionals and facilities managers out there. Another one of our pro tips for facilities managers from the NACFM. Today I wanted to talk about this device right here, a backflow preventer, or the correct term is a reduced pressure zone, or an RPZ. And you'll hear a backflow can be just as simple as a check valve, but it doesn't have all the additional controls and features of an RPZ. This is our potable water, that's what we call it in the Navy, but our fresh water for toilets and drinking water in the building. The RPZ's primary purpose is to prevent backflow, so the water comes into our building this direction, and it prevents flow from another source that's being fed by municipal water source or public water source to get any contamination going backwards. So the goal of this device is to stop, if the pressure is higher on this side than it is on this side, prevent that flow from going back. So there's two check valves in here. Because the flow is going this direction, the way people talk about this is this would be the number one stop and the number one check valve, and you have an arrow here. The number two check valve, the relief valve, which vents to this pin, and then the number two shutoff valve. Normally you would hire a professional who's been trained in doing RPZ testing to test these, and based on your municipality, you'll want to make sure that's being done in accordance with that. But in our location, because this is a potable water system, it's required to have it, but there's no one requiring that testing. So I still have this tested by our local plumber. But often you'll see a little bit of water venting out the bottom down here into this relief valve. So this indicates that the relief valve is lifting if you see water dripping. And a sign that this is fouled or not working correctly is that this is dripping all the time. A little burp of water from time to time is normal. As your building heats up in the daytime and there's no flow, you may see a little bit of back pressure as the pressure builds up, and you'll see this vent. But if this is venting all the time, one of the tests we can do really quickly is just to determine which check valve is actually fouled or damaged, or if the relief valve is not operating correctly, by just shutting this number two shutoff valve. If the flow continues to vent after you shut that shutoff valve, then the number one check valve is likely fouled. If it stops whenever you shut this number two, then the number one is operating correctly, and you have no flow coming out. That's likely the number two check valve is what's been fouled. On the smaller units, you may be able to take them apart safely and clean them yourselves and put in new O-rings or flip the O-ring over.
Backflow preventers is this heat tape is properly applied to where it may freeze and it's covered, and this would be an example of the vent that's constantly leaking, so you get a little bit of water when there's pressure upstream versus downstream.
On the smaller ones, you also have valves, and to ensure that you have your valves operating in the correct position, these are gate valves, and we have a lot of turns to shut this valve. But on a lot of, like this peacock valve, when the handle is perpendicular to the valve body, it typically means the valve is shut, and when it's in parallel with the valve body, it means the valve is open. And that's unless the handle's been installed incorrectly. It's important that you have these tested to prevent contamination and backflow, and wanted to make sure you guys got a little bit of a picture of something facilities managers deal with every day.